All right, so here's the lowdown of this book, okay? The cat doesn't die. Tobin is a snake, literally, and Judge Holden is the physical embodiment of war and is therefore God. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Canine Cannibalism. Today we are going to be taking a look at Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. The book is 351 pages, broken up into 23 chapters and an epilogue. I'll give you a quick blurb. There is a kid in the Old West, and he's a very violent child, and he falls in with a couple of groups of men who are also very violent, and they partake in many violent things, and the boy meets a man who may or may not be a supernatural entity, the physical embodiment of man-made evil, and then the book ends. I'm tired. I'm really tired, all right? I didn't bother going and getting my jacket on. I'm in an Evil Dead shirt. We're gonna go with it, okay? I don't have much planned for this video, all right? I don't have a script. I didn't take notes. I thought for the first half of this book, I was gonna make a quick YouTube short going over it, and then I was gonna be done. Because here's the deal, okay? I am aware of my own limitations as a reviewer of literature. And this book is clearly outside of my limitations. This would be like if I tried to review War and Peace or something similar by one of the big Russian authors, all right? I am woefully unequipped to review and analyze something of this magnitude. Just not equipped for it, okay? I read the book once. If I were to even go any farther than this, I would have to read it again because there are things toward the end that are said between characters that I just didn't understand on a metaphorical level because I'm probably misremembering things that happened earlier. It is a long book. It takes ages to go through a page, at least for me. It depends on the page, obviously. It is chock full of it is chock full. It is a full book. There is limited punctuation. These sentences run on for it feels like pages. Not exactly run on sentences, but you get what I'm saying. They're very long. They're very flowy. You have to reread them multiple times to get the full meaning of the sentence because you have to tear them apart and piece what the fuck McCarthy is trying to say and then read a larger part of it to put it all together. It is at certain points agonizing, and it is a wonderful book, and I loved it. Okay? Not as good as The Road for me. The Road is my favorite. This doesn't touch it in how much I enjoy The Road, but I would say it is a better book. I would go as far as to say that. This is impeccable, and I am woefully unequipped. I would have to read it again. I would have to do deep dives into Gnostic mysticism, which is a term that I learned doing research on this book. I would have to do a deep dive into Freemasonry, into Nietzsche and the Ubermensch, into other things. So I can't even think of them right now. Those are the big three. I would have to do research into those things. I'd probably have to do some more research into the Bible and biblical stories. And then I'd have to read the book again. And probably again. Okay? I'm not equipped. I'm not doing that. I'm just not. I have not patience nor time to do that. And so I will be giving you a layman's review of this book. A review as a person who has read it one time on a very surface level, and we're going to go from there because it goes so deep. Everything has a metaphorical meaning in this book. The whole thing is an allegory to things that I don't have the knowledge to understand. It is a lot. It is a lot. If you are going into this book for the first time as somebody, and here's the thing, I consider myself decently well read. I consider myself decently intelligent when it comes to literary concepts, okay? If you are going into this at my level of understanding of literature and history, or less than my understanding, this is going to be the review for you because you will not understand everything in this book on a first pass. You just won't. I mean, I had to reread certain paragraphs multiple times to even get a hint of the actual meaning behind it. I cannot tell you how many times I had to look up passages out of this book because I didn't understand them, only to find whole threads on Reddit or mostly Reddit actually, where people were going over the paragraphs or sentences and being like, what the fuck does this mean? All right. I'm not an English teacher. I don't do this professionally. This is a hobby. If I were to give you a full analysis of this book, I would be regurgitating other people's opinions. Some of my opinions on this book, on some of the meanings behind this book that I may or may not tell you in this video, are going to be slightly regurgitative, sure, of other people's opinions. I'm going to move on. As I said, the book is immaculate. I mean, the prose is, if you've read The Road, very similar. It's beautiful. It's flowy. I would even argue that it's more beautiful than the prose in The Road. This book focuses a lot more on the beauty. I believe a large part of it is focusing on the beauty and nostalgia of the Old West. And we're going to get into some of the hidden meanings behind things, the subtext. The secondary title of the book, okay, the full title is Blood Meridian, or The Evening Redness in the West. Now, there is a lot of focus throughout the book of the meridian of the earth, or sunsets, redness, that kind of thing. I believe that secondary title is an ode to the sunsetting of the Old West, the Wild West. And this book is a nostalgic piece about the Old West. In all of its brutality and violence, it is a piece in nostalgia of the Old West, of the beauty of it, of the freedom of it, and then also the horror of it to a certain extent. Okay. It is wonderful. It is beautiful. The dialogue is the same McCarthyan. I'm just going to start saying McCarthyan instead of McCarthy-esque because he deserves that kind of prestige. It is McCarthyan because it is a book by McCarthy. The dialogue is flowing in throughout the paragraphs. There is no dialogue punctuation. It is difficult at some certain points to discern who is talking and who is not. And I think it is great. And I think the effect is great. It is very similar to the effect in The Road, not to that level where it is only like two people talking and the dialogue is very linear. It's much different in this. And it's great. Characters are fantastic. The plot is fantastic, and there is a statement on the back from one of the people praising this book, calling it a conflation of the Inferno, the Iliad, and Moby Dick. And I agree greatly with like the Iliad or the Odyssey. It's very much this kid is drifting through the landscapes, and it's very Iliad or Odyssey, more so the Odyssey-esque. Just this great journey, not necessarily to find home or anything, because it very much seems that he's drifting aimlessly. Although, again, I guarantee you that's something that a lot of people who have read this book multiple times are going to disagree with me with, because I'm sure, I mean, there's a whole fucking thing at the end about like everything is happening for a reason. Everyone dances for a reason. Everyone's life, blah blah blah. So maybe he is moving towards some ultimate destination. I guess he does eventually end up at an ultimate destination, but he's not like going home. Although I guess you could argue that he's going. The book is so metaphorically dense. Okay, so metaphorically dense. Or I don't even know if that's the right word. It's a great book. It really is. Like I said, I don't have much planned for this video. Just it's a good book. I guess I'll give you a quick plot summary from what I remember off the top of my head. There's a kid. He runs away from home. He's very violent. He's troubled. He falls in with a group of men going back to Mexico after the Mexican-American War. This takes place in I said the Old West. It's like the 1840s. He falls in with a group of filibusters going back into Mexico after the Mexican-American War. They all die. Kid ends up in jail. He's one of the last ones. And or I think he is the last one. then he falls in with the Glanton gang. I didn't do any historical research on the actual Glanton gang. As far as I'm aware, there is an actual Glanton gang. Um, Kid falls in with this gang. They're scalp hunters on the in Mexico, or on the Mexican American border, mostly in Mexico. And he goes with them, and they hunt Apache, and they kill Apache, and they maraud. And the book is, I didn't do a trigger warning in this video. The book is horrifically violent. It's there's, off the top of my head, there is brutal infanticide, rape, necrophilia, at least allusions to necrophilia. Something about men coupled on the shore with the dead and dying women in reference to raping them. It is horrifically violent and brutal. And he falls in with these guys, and they do all this heinous shit. And he's with them for a while, and amongst them there is this man named Judge Holden. And if you know anything about this book, you probably have heard of Judge Holden. All right, I'll talk about him a little more after my summary, but he is, in my opinion, he is a supernatural being of some sort, assuming he really even exists at all. Um, there is an interpretation that I've heard that he is actually just a man. I don't fully subscribe to that. Maybe if I watched, I think it was like a 7-hour video that comes to that conclusion, uh, maybe I'd agree. I don't necessarily think he's the devil either, which I think is the conclusion that Wendy Goon came to, which I'm not watching his video either. I'll probably touch on his video at the end as well. Um, anyway, kids with these people, and then their debauchery brings about their end. They are massacred by a tribe of natives, and the kid ends up on the run from these natives, and then he and one final man come across the judge who was in their group. He also escaped, and the judge, again, really metaphorically dense, really like lots of subtext. He tries to get the boy to give him his gun, and the kid doesn't do it. After another man who also managed to escape uh, gives the judge something, and it's heavily implied that it's sort of a Faustian deal, where by giving something to the judge you are selling your soul. Again, kind of demon devil-esque. I'll talk about it. The boy doesn't do it. The boy realizes something's amiss. There's an ex-priest, the man he was with, he's an ex-priest, and he warns the boy, and there's a whole bunch of shit where the boy is like realizing that something's not quite right with the judge. And then the judge starts hunting him and the ex-priest, and then he and the ex-priest manage to escape, even though it's heavily implied that the judge knows where they are, kind of. And then years pass, he's 45, he runs into the judge again, something happens, and it's not clear what. The boy, or the man at this point, he's like 45, like I said, he goes down to the outhouse, and the judge is inside after they've had a whole philosophical, really dense conversation, and the judge is in there waiting for him, and he hugs him in a way that is heavily implied to be rapey and sexual. And then he slams the door to the outhouse shut, and then two men walk up to the outhouse a little later. There's a third man there pissing into the mud outside the outhouse, and the man says, "Don't go in there, you don't want to see what's in there." And then they open the door, and it's not clear what they actually see in there. And then there's an epilogue, about a guy traveling. It seems like he's almost tilling the land. He's traveling across the land by holes that he's simultaneously making in the ground and striking the metal of the thing that he's using to make the holes against rocks in the ground, producing a spark. And then there are people behind him, and he's moving onward, and they move onward. And I have no idea what any of that means. So that's the book. I there's so much that I didn't even touch on, that I can't even touch on. It's so it's so it's so. That's all I can really say. Let's talk about the judge really fast. I, as I said, I don't think he's human. He crushes a man's head between his hands, not like Omni Man with Red Rush, but more like he crushes it so hard that maybe he breaks the guy's neck or something. But the kid says something or thinks something about the guy's head being wrong, and then he falls over dead. The judge lifts up an extremely heavy rock, which is apparently a meteorite, and carries it a distance. He rips a heavy, like it's almost a mortar. I don't remember what it actually was, but it's a big fucking gun that's like attached to like a wood truck, is what they call it. I don't know what that means. Again, some of my misunderstandings of these things is due to lack of historical context, but it's mounted to a truck, so it's mounted to something wooden, maybe like a roller or something. I don't know. But he rips it off of the whatever it's attached to, and then cradles it under an arm in order to escape the natives that attack the Galantan gang and kill them all, except for him and a couple of guys and the kid. Um, what else? He kills a horse in one blow with a rock by smashing it upside the head. He he's a polymath who knows multiple languages. He manages to, the first time the Glanton gang meets him before the kid shows up, he's sitting, I think he's naked on a rock in the desert as if he's expecting them, and then he helps them manufacture gunpowder out of like volcanic sulfur and coal and bat guano and urine. He seems to appear and disappear randomly. The judge is completely pale. He's 7 feet tall. He has tiny little hands and feet. He's often described as having childlike features. He has no hair on his body and is often likened to an infant or a manatee, something like that. At the end of the book, and this is kind of important, he says that he never sleeps. Or no, he says that he never dies multiple times, and the book says that he never sleeps. I think that's an important distinction. I might get into that. So, I mean, it's pretty clear to me that he's at least supposed to kind of seem supernatural. I think he is a supernatural entity. I think it's kind of a shallow interpretation to just think he's a demon. I think that's kind of an easy way out. I'm not necessarily saying that's a wrong interpretation. I just think that's kind of an easy interpretation. I believe that's what Wendigoon came to. Apparently, his video is just 5 hours long before he comes to a very shallow conclusion about evil prevailing or whatever, and the judge being Satan. And then he also uses a couple of really confirmation biasy pieces of evidence to conclude that the judge is Satan. Like I think he calls him hairless like a snake. Like that's a really really big jump. And again, I didn't watch the video. This is all what I've heard other people say, especially people in the Cormac McCarthy communities and stuff, the people who liked his books. It seems to me the Wendigoon video, and I know I'm getting a little off track here. What happened here kind of happens every time he does a video, where it brings a lot of new people into the media, but it flabbergasts the people who are fans of the media because it's a rather layman-esque review. I mean, I did a whole talk about his disturbing movie iceberg on my second channel because that video was monumental in my life, and so much of what he says in that video is just blatantly wrong and put a lot of the people who are into that kind of content in a bad light, but also brought a lot of people like me into that genre. So, I mean, this channel probably wouldn't exist without him, without that video. So, you know, uh, I'm not gonna hate on the guy. I don't have any ill will towards him. I have no real opinion of him other than what I've heard about what has happened and continues to happen whenever he does a video essay. Anyway, I personally think the judge is the physical embodiment of war, or war and death, or something similar. Manly evil. I personally think it's more likely that he's like the physical embodiment of war, the four horsemen of the apocalypse kind of war, if that makes sense. And his whole philosophy is very, again, very dense, war is God, war is the creator and the destructor. War is man's true purpose. And when he says war, he doesn't mean like actual. He does mean actual warring, but it's also more just like violence, like bloodshed and rape and murder and thievery and marauding. It's not just two armies fighting each other. It's two people engaged in violence against each other because of their own personal beliefs or reasons or righteousness or whatever. And war is righteous and war is God. I said that already. War is everything. And that's his philosophy. It's very like Nietzsche, like Ubermensch, like supreme morality, like a perfectly moral being. And war is that perfect morality in his head. It's very odd. I believe it's pronounced Nietzsche. I'm gonna look like a fucking poser if I didn't pronounce that right. Whatever. I'm slightly familiar with the Ubermensch. I know my stuff a little bit. And I did also see people talking about that on different platforms and posts, but that is a clear distinction, or not a distinction, a clear correlation there if you want to draw it. Again, I am wondering how many of these theories that people have are just confirmation bias. I don't know, but I think he's war. He, at one point towards the end, when he's having this very long and dense conversation with the kid, now man, about all sorts of random shit, life, the dance that is life, and then he likens the dance of events in life to a ritual, and says that the event that will happen tonight is a true ritual because only true rituals involve blood, and then he likens war as a concept to the dance and to a ritual, a blood ritual, and then he says that war, as it becomes dishonored and loses its blood or whatever the fuck he says, the men who are dancing that dance will become false dancers, and there will only be one dancer left on the stage, and he's alluding to himself. It's so much. There are a couple of things in that conversation though. One, the let me see if I can find it for you. I actually tabbed one of these things, and it's right near that. So here's the judge says, the conversation starts with a whole bunch of stuff about like everything being set in motion for a reason, everyone being in a place for a reason. Even if you think you have no reason for being in a place, why are you there? What set you there? And the judge says something about there being an other that sets these people on these paths, and then he says, and if this is so, can you guess who that other might be? And the kid replies, no, can you? And the judge says, I know him well. What does that mean? Is he inferring that he himself is the person that sets these people on their paths that they think don't exist? Kind of. I don't know. Is he inferring that he knows God? Or because war is God? I think he even says that at one point. War is God. Um, is he declaring that he if he is war, as I think him to be, is he declaring that he sets these people on their paths? He also makes a lot of comment about death, which is why originally I thought he might be death. Is he making a comment that death is what sets people on these paths? Because there's a lot in this whole conversation about death being the ultimate destiny or the end of the dance. And that's like where everything leads to. I don't know. And then at the end, when he's saying that there will be one man dancing on the stage who is a true dancer, a true partaker of war, or whatever the fuck, a true engager of the blood ritual of war and life, or whatever the fucking shit. He asks the boy, "Can you guess who that might be?" referring to himself. And the kid says, "You ain't nothing." And the judge says, "You speak truer than you know." Now, again, I take that as him saying I'm kind of a concept, maybe not a real person, I'm not a real man, maybe. Maybe he's he's a very well-spoken man, and the kid said you ain't nothing, so maybe he's making fun of the kid who's essentially making a double negative. You ain't nothing, you are something. I don't know. Also, another reason I thought maybe he's Another reason I thought maybe he was Death is because Death is the final judge, and he's referred to as the Judge or Judge Holden. I don't even think we get a full name of him ever because I don't believe he has a full name. It's also said at one point that he doesn't have a lineage and that he came from nothing and nothing comes from him, and so he's like not an actual man. So he's probably not a man, and then also maybe war is the final judge because war seems to be everything in his philosophy apparently, and war is death. It's God. So maybe war is the final judge. That's why he's named the Judge. It would make sense that he's war because war is his philosophy. You can see I'm scrambling and I'm kind of all over the place because I've been through these thoughts about 10 times and it's still no clearer. Still no clear. Nothing's clear. Nothing's cleared up for me. Nothing. It's a good book. You should read it. Next video will be normal. See ya.